So this is Sister Judy from Halifax. How many of you know the topic for this class? Yes? Was it announced? Yes, okay. So the topic is lightness in learning. Lightness in learning. So is this a relevant topic for you? Yes? How many of you feel you're light in your learning? Yes, many. Wonderful. So you're enjoying your learning experience. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. I was reflecting on why this is a valuable topic. And I guess it must be for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a big part of our Brahman life, learning. In fact, as a university hospital, it's at least 50%, if not almost 100% of our experience as a Brahmin is learning, right? The other part's healing. And when we teach the meditation course, we say, Madari, Meditari, it's using our thoughts to heal. The root word of meditation is Madari and Meditari, right? So they're very connected, how we think and healing our thinking. So we spend a lot of our time learning. But it must also be because sometimes maybe our learning isn't light. Maybe our learning's a bit heavy. Has anyone experienced that? Heaviness in learning? No. Nobody? Ever felt heavy in the learning process? Yeah. Yeah, we're on a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. We have to pace ourselves. There are times when it gets heavier and times where it's lighter. It's interesting because, we are beings of light. Baba's a being of light. The knowledge is to enlighten us. And our ultimate aim is to be completely light. And we feel ourselves getting lighter on this journey. So it should all just be light. But sometimes it's a bit heavy. So when I got thinking about this topic, lightness in learning, I had to relate to it from my own experience. And part of my experience as a Brahmin has been to work with a number of centers around the world, supporting learning. And I discovered 3 things that I witnessed that seemed to make the learning heavy. And so I'll share those with you, and then you can tell me if this fits with your experience. So one of the things that seemed to make learning a bit heavy in the centers that I visited was a feeling of being overwhelmed. That there's just so much. There's so much knowledge. There's so little time. There's so many wonderful examples around me, and sometimes the feeling of just being overwhelmed. How am I going to learn all of this fast enough? So for some souls, that brings a feeling of heaviness to their efforts. It just doesn't feel possible. So it was one thing I witnessed. The other thing I witnessed in the travels was that in some places and in some of our thinking, there is this idea that there's really only one way to do this journey. There's only one way to be a Brahmin, or to be a really good Brahmin, to be a good student. Kind of the bhakti sanskara that we would copy, that we would become an exact copy. Yeah, so the cloning thought. You know what a clone is? Yes, an exact duplication. And so the feeling that I have to be an exact replication of the model I see actually creates a feeling of heaviness. Why? It's impossible. Isn't it? I cannot be exactly like anyone, including Brahma Baba. I will not be Brahma Baba, right? But I will follow him because he's the highest and best example. And in following him, I will become my highest and best. But when we look at the daddies, although each of them is very close to their stage of perfection, they're all very different, aren't they? So there isn't one way to be a Brahmin. And yet, when I visited some of the centers, what I witnessed is that there was an assumption that really, to be a good Brahmin, you had to be like this. Anyone encountered that? Yes. Okay. So Baba put me to work with the youth. And I think it's because they rebel and they don't want to be like that. And so with the youth, we try and find methods that they can learn in a variety of ways, not just one way, not one fixed way. So that was one reason I saw people getting heavy in their journey, is this feeling as I must copy. I must do it a certain way. How many deities are there as a memorial in Hinduism? Does anyone know? It's 330 million. 330 million. So that means by the end of the Silver Age, there are 330 million souls. So that means by the end of the Confluence Age, there will be how many Brahmin types out there? Number-wise. There'll be 8, there'll be 108, there'll be 16,000, there'll be 900,000, and then there'll be 330 million. So in other words, there must be 330 million ways to be a Brahmin. Yeah? So in any center where they're trying to replicate clones, that's not really an accurate understanding of knowledge, is it? We're not carbon copies. We're each unique. This is the bouquet of flowers. Yeah. So that was one thing I witnessed, is that people got very heavy with the thought that they must copy and be exactly like someone else, or exactly like the model, the idea of what a good Brahmin is. And that made people very heavy in their learning efforts, because it wasn't much fun, really. I can never be, well, I can try to be a second-rate copy of someone or a first-rate version of me. Yeah? So that was the second thing I witnessed. How is the speed translator? Am I speaking slow enough? Mm-hmm. No sign. That means he didn't get it? It's okay. Okay, thank you. And the third reason that I saw, and have definitely experienced, I've experienced all of these myself. The third one was not digesting knowledge. So being such a keen and enthusiastic student that I would study a lot and I would make lots of effort, but it wasn't processing. It's almost like I've eaten too much food and I haven't actually learned how to digest it properly. So it turned into healthy cells and good blood flow, and so I get compacted with knowledge, and there's too much in there that isn't flowing smoothly. So I'm no longer light, I feel really heavy, like too much food. That was the third thing that I witnessed traveling around as a reason why learning efforts felt heavy. Has anyone witnessed that third one or experienced that third one themselves? Yeah, okay. So there may be other reasons why we might want to consider lightness in learning, but those were the three that came to mind for me in thinking about this class. Anyone have another reason that jumps to mind? Okay, so let's go with those three for now. So I'd like to explore some of the antidotes to those if I could. And I'd like to start actually by doing an exercise together where we all learn something new together. And then we reflect on what that experience was like. So are you willing? It's very simple. You don't even have to stand up. So are you willing? Okay. So this is a very simple exercise. Some of you may know this already, because I need my hands. They teach this to children in school, and it's called brain gym. Has anyone heard of brain gym? I know some of you know this exercise, okay. But some of you don't. And it's to connect right and left hemispheres of the brain. So they're using it actually with children who have attention deficit disorder. And they say it's partly because the two hemispheres aren't connected, so they can't focus. They can't concentrate. So this is good for us meditators, actually. So here's how it goes. It's a very simple exercise which is intended to connect left and right hemispheres of the brain. And it's very simple. And it goes like this. You all have to put out your right finger. So we can learn this together. So put out your right finger. Great. Okay. And put up your left thumb. Left thumb up. Fingers in as best you can. That's it. Okay. So finger out, thumb up. Got it? Okay. So switch. Okay, switch back. Okay, switch back. Okay, switch again. Okay, now see if you can get a bit of a rhythm going. Okay, this is the advanced class. Okay, but the beginner's class. Okay. Are you getting it? It's really hard, isn't it? It's really hard. Yeah, it should be so simple. So this tells you something about your left and right hemispheres. So if you're having trouble concentrating in meditation, more love for Baba and a little more brain gym. Okay. Okay. So that was a very simple exercise of learning something new. Yeah? So I'd like you just to reflect on what happened during that process. You all got set up to go, right? And then you tried it, and what happened? You discovered it was hard. All right, and what happened inside of you? Oh. Yeah. And then, why did you keep going? Why did you keep going? It was hard. Because it was fun. It was funny. It was a bit of a challenge. Okay? And so then what kept you going? Nothing to lose. That's nice. Nothing to lose. All right. And what is it that helped you learn? Because all of you learned to do this. It's just a question of degree. Right? Some of you got better at it than others. Right? I could see from here. But you all learned to a degree how to do this. So what helped you learn? Willpower, so you were determined. What? Cleverness. Finding a trick. Feels good if it works, so a little bit of positive reinforcement, feeling some success. Okay. And what helped from the teacher's input? Not much. A little bit of encouragement. Okay. What else? Did the demonstration help? If I just said, okay, here's what it's like. Put your finger out, put your thumb up, go. So this helped, seeing it. Okay, what else helped? Teacher was like, okay, this is impossible, but let's do it. Okay. Yeah? Okay. So there are a number of things that help us learn. And Baba is actually the best teacher for each of us. Why is he the best teacher for each of us?
Because he never judges us.
He never judges us, so he keeps staying light, keeps encouraging, and he gives us lots and lots of methods. He uses lots of methods, and for each of us, he uses the methods that work for us. Do you know how you learn? Do you know how it is that Baba teaches you? For me, he's very honest with me. That's very helpful. I'd rather hear it honestly than hear a fluff story. So that works for me. And he shows me great examples. And then he sets a challenge that I like to rise to. These are some of the methods that work for me, but it might be different for each of you. So this exercise, exploring how we learn, what helps us learn, a very simple little exercise here, is part of the antidote to the last two heavy issues that I witnessed in the centers that I visited. And that was, can you remember? Second one was trying to be a clone. Third one is, right, the thing to heaviness is trying to copy something that isn't me, right? And the third one was not digesting, right? So a little bit about my background. Before I came to Baba, I'd been working in the field of learning, really, for about 25 years, maybe, as a facilitator. And working with adults in organizations where the organizations are in trouble and they need to change. So people need to learn new ways of working together, solving problems together, so that the company or the social organization continues. So this role has taken me into learning how adults learn, because you have to understand how adults learn in order to help them change. So one thing I learned was the difference between pedagogy and andragogy. So you know the word pedagogy, I'm sure, right? It's the science of how children learn. A pedagogue is a teacher, right? So pedagogy is the science of how children learn. And the basic assumption is that children are empty vessels and we must fill them with knowledge. This is how schools are built. Fill children with knowledge. This is the science of how children learn. And when they discovered about 50 years ago, when they started paying attention to how adults learn, what they discovered is that that doesn't work very well with adults. Trying to fill them with knowledge, assuming that they were empty and they just needed to be told things, and then it would magically transform them. Why does that not work with adults? Because they have experiences, right? We understand that children have too, that they come with sanskaras. But adults actually resist being told. Sometimes they actively resist because they think they already know, and sometimes in the subconscious they resist. They hear it, oh yes, very nice, comes in, yeah, I'll do that, and they don't. Right? It's a form of resistance that's actually very, very subtle. But I believe it's something that we as Brahmins are working with all the time, is our own subconscious resistance to what we're being told. Because we're full of sanskaras. Even though the conscious mind wants it, the heart wants it, we have our own sanskaras to deal with. And there's a subconscious resistance to taking it on. So the science of adult learning is called andragogy. And it assumes that adults are already full. And that what we need to do is navigate what they already know and weave the new stuff in there somehow so that they see its relevance. And it gets, it finds a place inside what they already know. Does that make sense? Which is different than just telling. Now, one of the models for learning that we have in Baba's Center is the didactic model. To sit at the front and tell. Right? And then everyone out there will get it. But if any of you are center coordinators or read Murley, you notice that not everyone gets it. Right? That there's a gap between being told and taking it in and using it. Right? So Baba's Murley is an absolute complete learning experience because it's full of so many different methods. Baba in the Murley uses metaphors, images, symbols, stories, right? He uses concepts. He uses straight directions. He gives us assignments to practice things. He's got everything all in one Murley. He's got all the teaching methods all in one Murley. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the teacher on the Gadi is using all those methods. Sometimes the teacher on the Gadi is only using telling method. Has anyone else seen this? I've seen this. Yeah. It's not good or bad, it just is. But it's only one method. And that means that the adults who are listening don't always get to work it their way, to learn in the way that works best for them. So one of the things that really struck me when I came to Baba, and it was in an October 1988 Murley, Baba gave very clear instructions for how to churn the Murley. And he said, the reason you don't always translate this knowledge that I give you into practical expression, into change, into transformation, is because you don't know how to churn it properly. And he gave the 3 steps for churning, which I will share with you. And I was struck when I heard it because they were the 3 steps in the adult learning cycle that I'd been using for 20 years. I thought, oh, Baba's the original adult educator. I was so excited. I thought, no wonder I love this theory, this model, and I've been using it for so many years. It's because it was Baba's method. So I'll tell you the 3 steps he used, and what was, because this is a way to help us digest so we can stay light. And chances are that each of us in this room prefer one of the 3 steps. That we have a natural tendency, because of our own sanskaras, to really do well with one step and not maybe do the other. 2 steps. And because of that, we maybe don't digest fully. Does that make sense? And if I can share the 3 questions after I share with you the picture of the different ways that adults learn, that I learned as a facilitator, and ask you to find out what your tendency is first, and then I'll give you Baba's 3 questions. So everyone needs a piece of paper and a pen. Have you got that? Yep. Okay, so on your piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to draw a big cross, like this. Okay, and on the top, I'm going to ask you to draw a little heart. And on the bottom, I'm not very good at brains, so maybe draw a head. Heart up top, head at the bottom. Head. Yeah. It's not very good, but you get the idea. Heart at the top, head at the bottom. So imagine this is a continuum, and I'm going to ask you to reflect on your own experience learning from Baba's Murli. So when you reflect back and remember yourself in Murli class, I would like you to see if you can discern somewhere along this continuum whether for you Murli comes in and you experience the Murli through feelings. So that would mean you're having feelings throughout the Murli. When you leave the Murli, when you leave Murli class, what you're left with is a feeling. Okay? Or, and this is a false, forced choice, because we all do both, of course. But I'm going to ask you to think of your tendency. Or, when I'm in Murli class and I leave Murli class, am I receiving Baba's knowledge through my head? Through thoughts? Am I taking it intellectually? So in other words, I would be thinking of the ideas in the Murli, and I'd leave kind of analyzing, thinking deeply about what did this point mean? Is that a clear distinction for you to choose? And then I want you to put a little dot somewhere on this continuum showing where you are closest to. So I might be more up here, say, or I might be closer to, well, I'm not all head, but mostly, the way I process or receive Murli is the ideas. I'm interested in the ideas and understanding the ideas, or it's more the feeling. Okay? Everyone done that? Well, you'll be perfectly light if you're in the middle, of course, but chances are you're coming at it from one entry point. You might be in the middle. It's hard to discern, actually, because we all do both. And as Brahman souls, of course, we can do all of it, but we tend to come to the learning process at the end of the kalpa with a bit of a fixed pattern to our learning, our approach to learning. So it's good to know that, so we can work with that, okay? So that's one. Now, let's go this way, other continuum, okay? So on this side, I'd like you to put an eyeball, an eye, or a pair of glasses, something. Okay? On the right side of your paper. That's the okay. And on the left side, I'd like you to put a hand. Hand. Okay? Hand. Okay? So now this question to you is, when I leave Murli class, do I like to reflect? Just reflect back on what I heard in the Murli and sort of hold it in my mind's eye throughout the day and create images and relive some of the experiences that I had during the Murli. Or do I like to leave and get practical? Okay, Baba said do this, I'm going to go off and do that. So it's sort of the yogis or the karma yogis. Okay, they like to get physical, they like to get practical, they like to put it into action, what Baba tells them to do. Okay, so when I leave Murli class, which is my tendency? And put a little dot somewhere on your continuum. And then you will end up having something, that looks like that somewhere. Okay? Can you just do that for yourself? So, just a box. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do this part, but it's more just discerning for yourself, so you understand how you learn, how you come to the learning with Baba. Do I do it through my heart or my head? And do I like to hold and reflect on the images throughout the day? And of course we do both, but What's my preference? What's my style tendency? Or do I like to get practical? Put it into action. Okay, does everybody have a picture of where they are? Your little quadrant? Yes? Okay. So how many of you, quick show of hands, are in the, I hear it through my heart, and I like to hold it in my mind throughout the day and reflect? Quick show of hands. How many over here? Aha! So, lovely. So you would be called Baba's artists and storytellers. Okay. So these ones, apparently, and you can tell me if this is correct, these ones actually, like you as souls, learn best when you get to hear stories. You get to share with other people. You get heart connections. You get to see multiple different methods. And then you can choose. You like to see the broad options available. It's like a menu of options. This would be your best learning style. And you like images and pictures. Creative. So a commentary that has you use all 5 senses and actually imagine a world. These souls are brilliant for commentaries, these ones. Okay, so how many of you said you hear it through your head and then you like to hold it and reflect on it throughout the day? Oh, we got such a mix in there. You look around the room because there's not so many of these. Put your hands up, those who like to do through the head and hold it. Okay, these are called Baba's professors. So in a group, in a learning group, in a learning situations, these souls like to come at knowledge with an intention to take a point and understand it very deeply. They want depth. They don't want the breadth. So complete opposite of the other group. Right? So not too many stories. I want to take something and I want to analyze it. I want to understand it. I want to get right to the bottom of what's the meaning of this point. Yeah? Does this sound true for those who put their hands up? Yeah. Okay. Great. How many of you said, I hear it through my head, and then I want to do something with it? I want to get practical. Hands up. Look around the room. Ooh, not so many. Well, you know what? We're about even. Okay. These are Baba's engineers. So these souls, this approach to learning, is essentially, I'm interested in understanding something deeply. So if you think of an engineer, they have to learn all about physics and math and all these complicated things. They have to learn it well. Why? So they can apply it practically to how to build a bridge. They're really only interested in the knowledge for its usefulness. How is this useful? How is it practical? How can I apply it practically? Right? Engineers tend to be ones who love writing charts. And they're very structured. Yes, you do? They're very structured in their thinking. Step 1, step 2, step 3. So they actually like to take complicated things and simplify them. Yes? Does that make sense? You recognize yourself? Yeah, I mean, you recognize yourself at this point. Okay, so the last group, those of you who said, I hear it through my heart, through the feelings, and then I like to do something with it throughout the day. Oh, so few. Look around. Oh no. Okay. Oh, you know what? We have even numbers in all 4 in this room. Okay. Now there's 2 names for this group. One, actually it was the NCOs who called this Baba's social workers. Social workers. But the other name they gave it was activists. Activists, which is a bit more general. So these are souls who like to have lots of experiences, and they like to learn through trial and error. So they're very resilient, because of course if you're learning through trial and error, you make lots of mistakes. But you get good, at try. So they're risk takers. And they have to be actively involved. To sit and just have someone tell them something would drive them crazy. They need to get up and try it. Right? So they get confined in lecture format. They need to try it in order to see how it works. Okay. So those are the 4 different approaches And this is a Lockic theory, actually. So this came from, some brother in 1955 who started thinking about adults and how they learn. But this is the basis of adult learning, the science of adult learning. And it's interesting that in this room we have every style represented, right? So what's the value of knowing this about yourself? What does it matter? Some of us are engineers, some of us are professors, some of us are artists, storytellers, and some of us are activists. What's the value of knowing that? Inner conflict, outer conflict. There's no inner conflict, outer conflict. You know who you are. Right. Okay. So she's saying that if I know that there are different approaches to learning, then I won't be judgmental about other people's approach. It's just different. It's not better or worse, it's just different. Yes. So that's one thing that helps us stay light in the learning, is to recognize my own style is unique, and everyone else at my center has a different way of learning. Right? So it removes a heaviness of judgment. Oh, well, we all have to learn this way. Well, we don't all learn that way. I may not learn in the same way that the person on the gadi learns, or the primary teachers in the center, right? So what's another value of knowing that there's this variety of approaches to learning in a center? Right. It is for me the best way, but it might not be for someone else. Yeah. You can create new ways. And also I think it's very important to recognize that we need to find multiple ways, because not everybody who comes to the center is going to learn the way I learn. So I have to be conscious that, maybe someone needs a bit of lecture. Maybe they need to spend some time analyzing a point, but maybe not too much time, right? So each of these, in its pure form, are there any pure ones at the end of the cycle? But I mean, the best part of the storyteller is the empathy and the imagery, right? The creativity of the artist. The best of the professor is getting meaning. Now, too much imagery and not enough meaning, it's not balanced, right? Too much meaning, but no beauty, we can get stuck, right? Too much activism without some quiet, deep analysis means I just get busy, right? And too much structuring without any creativity means I get a bit rigid and dry. So any one of these has a beautiful side to it, of course, and then a potential to get stuck in our own sanskar, our own pattern, our own approach to learning. That make sense? So, would you like to know Bubba's questions? Because I thought these were very, very beautiful. And actually, this is how he told us to churn them early. And I was struck by how they cover all the different learning styles. So the first question was, stop and reflect on your experience of the Murli. So this is just a heart. What was my experience of the Murli? It's a lovely question to ask the self. What was my experience? Not what did I think about it. What was my experience of Murli? And to see if I can find a feeling. Because that's a key part of a balanced learning. The second question he asked is, what stood out for you from the Murli? What stood out? So of all the many points that Bubba spoke, each day for each of us something different will stand out. Yeah? Will take our attention. Right? Because each of us is different. And something will be there that's just for me. And I will notice that point that maybe no one else in the class noticed. But I noticed it. So for me it was important. Right? So what stood out, or what did I notice from the Murli? was his second question. Well, actually, there's 3 questions, but the first one is, remember your experience of the Murli. So let's say 4 questions. Okay. So now the third question then is, what is the significance of that for you? So what is the meaning or significance of that thing that stood out? That thing you noticed in the Murli this morning, what's the significance of that for you? So that's an analysis question. Why did that point stick out for me? I have to do some thinking. I have to go deeper. Yeah? And the last question, he said, has 2 parts. How can I use this from the Murli today to serve myself and to serve others? How can I use what I learned from the Murli today to serve myself and to serve others? Isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? And in, the world where I was working, before I came to Baba, that's actually called the adult learning cycle. And the theory in the Lokik world is that unless you actually reflect on an experience, you will just continue to repeat the same pattern. You will just react, do the same thing you always did. So you have to stop and reflect. From reflection, you have to stop and make meaning. Why did that stand out for me? It's the only way that an adult will allow new information in, is if they stop to analyze, why did that point stand out for me? This, making meaning, is the place where actually we have realizations. That stood out for me because I've always done it this way, and this is a new way. I never thought of that. Or that stood out for me because it bugged me, and I have this samskara. Whatever. Something stands out in the Murli because it's working on us deeply, right? This is the moment of realization. If we don't go deep, we won't get realization, and nothing changes. We just keep taking in knowledge and going, that stood out, I really liked that. We have reactions to the knowledge. Very nice. I loved what Baba said today. This is my favorite point. Great, but why? Why? What's the meaning? What's the substance within that you liked so much? We can't just stop at liking it. Right? This is where we get meaning. This is where we get realization. And the last is, why is he giving us this knowledge? So that we can do something with it. If I sit quietly and just don't transform my behavior, even if I'm sitting quietly and using that point to influence my Mensa Seva, I am using it practically. Right? And using it practically, it changes my dharana, it rewires my brain. Right? We need to use knowledge practically. So how can I use this for myself and in service for others? And then his last point in this Murli was, and then just hold that experience throughout your day. So he completed the loop, the learning loop. Yeah? Reflect, make meaning, apply it practically, and then hold that experience throughout the day. And this is what Baba called the churning cycle. How to churn the Murli so we digest it fully so we can stay light and not get stuck in any one quadrant, which might be our comfort zone. I may come to Baba and be really great at reflecting and creating images, and if I don't make meaning, I don't move forward, and I eventually get stuck. I might be really great at making meaning, but unless I create some beauty with it and do something with it, I will be in analysis paralysis. I will overthink. Right? If I come to Baba and I'm really great at building bridges, designing things based on knowledge, but there's no beauty in it or there's no heart in it, it won't sustain me. It'll get dry at a certain point. Right? And if I come and I'm a great activist, I'm great at applying knowledge, but I didn't stop to figure out which knowledge I should apply today, because this is really the one that's going to help me, then I'll just be busy. And I'll get stuck in that pattern. So each Each one can create its own heaviness. And I really like that together, if we're at the center of this wheel, we are the light at the center of this wheel, we're doing all of them. We're moving easily and lightly, flowing around this cycle. So this is from Baba's October 88 Avyakt Murli. If anyone would like to, it's a very short Murli, and it's jam-packed with good stuff, if you can find it. And I thought I would share it just because it's been so beneficial for me in Murli, and it's really helped, especially with the youth, to actually with anyone who's any Brahmin. The NCs and the RCs had a great time with this, playing with this, and pointing across the room and going, oh, that's why you do that all the time, and having some fun with each other. But seeing how unique my learning approach is, and then customizing my own process. Being a good teacher for myself, so that I find the methods that work for me. So, what do you think of Baba's churning cycle? It's nice. Do you see where you might spend most of your time and not do the other questions? Do some of you do just some questions, like what stands out maybe, or what's meaning, but no application? Or can you see where you would benefit going into another question? Yeah, taking yourself around the cycle. Okay. Can you force yourself to go into another quadrant? Never. Force is counterproductive. You can invite yourself to experiment with the other question. So what I'm going to invite you to do, actually, is to just reflect on this morning's Murli using this cycle. Okay, is it too far away, this morning's Murli? Or is it still in your mind? Yeah? So let's just take a moment and see how it works, and see where we find it easiest. Okay? And where we need to stretch a little bit for ourselves in our own learning. So just take yourselves back to morning Murli class and see if you can remember this morning's Murli. You're getting key points coming to mind. So reflect on what are the points that stood out for you. Again, you might start with feelings. The feeling you had in the Murli. So this is around pure thought. Remember that? Remembering who I am. And see if you can recall something that stood out for you from this morning's Murli. Oh yeah, it's coming back. Okay. Now I'd like you to do the next step. Why did that stand out? What was the significance of the point or the feeling that you're remembering at this time? What was the significance of that for you? Now a whole day has passed, so you may have already used that practically. But if you haven't, how could you use this learning, this significance of this point? How could you use it practically to serve yourself and to serve others? Are you getting something from that process, those 3 steps? Okay, and it should be very natural and easy. So for me this morning, there was a feeling of great strength when I left Murli. And then I reflected why, what was that about? And it was this fearlessness and the Shakti image of Durga and Kali with a consort. I thought, why is that significant? It occurred to me, I love the word consort. It's thrilling because it has no baggage of marriage. So there's a sanskara there. So I got quite thrilled, and I never thought of Durga and Kali with partners. That was new. And so thinking about that took me a bit deeper, and thinking, gee, Kali, even Kali had a partner. God. And And so then that brought me into how could I use that today, and was about being as fierce as Callie and still knowing I have an equal, well, or a more than equal, but a partner with me that wasn't limiting like marriage. That was just my little cycle. So I've used that throughout the day, this feeling of having a consort next to me all day. It was just one fast little cycle, and there were many things that stood out. Each one I did a little cycle on, and each one produced, an application. So I see it's time for meditation, and I will take my leave. And thank you very much for playing along with me. Let's just do this quickly and see how much you've learned. Right finger out, left thumb out. See what your brains did while we were preoccupied with other things, and see if you can do it again. So, of course, the main thing about learning is practice, practice, practice. Okay. Om Shanti.